Hey, what's up guys? It's Joel, the Daily Guru. Welcome to my brand new segment we're gonna be doing here on YouTube twice a week, where I figured it's time to make this visual. It's time to get in your face and show you just how passionate I am about my music. Every single Tuesday, I'm gonna do something called Something Old, Something New. I'm gonna talk about an old album that I really love or I think is way overrated, and then I'm gonna get something brand new to talk about because Tuesdays is the day the music industry still releases a majority of their music. On Thursdays, I'm gonna do the same thing with the old album, but for something new, I'm gonna look at something that's come out in the last few months that you might have missed. So today, the first thing we're gonna do with something old is one of my all-time favorite records. The year is 1963. It's a great year from what I've been told. And you have a man by the name of John Coltrane. You've probably all heard John Coltrane. Hopefully every one of you has actually heard John Coltrane. He is my favorite jazz musician of all time. I have no problem saying that. If any of you wanna argue a different jazz musician, I'm more than happy to argue with you. I look forward to that argument. John Coltrane is doing his thing. He's making some amazing music. You start to go into his modal shifts and all that. And then there's this other guy. And my biggest problem with this other gentleman is the fact that he is one of the greatest singers that history seems to overlook constantly. His name is Johnny Hartman. And I know, a majority of you are sitting there saying, I've never heard of Johnny Hartman. That is your bad. He has an album, it's called I Just Dropped By to Say Hello. It's a fantastic record, I suggest you buy it. But that's not what we're talking about here. So you have John Coltrane, the most amazing jazz saxophone player ever. That's fact. You have Johnny Hartman, one of the most amazing singers ever to bless the face of this earth. And you know, the one big thing a lot of people always said about John Coltrane is he never records with a vocalist. He never did. I mean, he worked with Thelonious Monk, he worked with Duke Ellington, he's worked with a lot of really great jazz luminaries, and obviously his backing band, a lot of the guys in there went on to become greats, but he never worked with a vocalist. So as the story is told, John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman get to talking a little bit, and this would be the only vocalist in history that John Coltrane was willing to lead a band for. If that's not enough to get you to check out Johnny Hartman, I don't know what is. So, you know, John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman, they're both great on their own, but you need a whole backing band. So the backing band you have there is basically John Coltrane's band at the time. They find some studio time in New York City, they go in, they record the album, the entire album, in single takes. I believe one song had a second take on it. The perfection that they were able to achieve on single takes, it's absolutely stunning. If you've never heard this record, just set aside a little bit of time in the afternoon. Your life will change for the better, I guarantee it. But the more interesting thing actually is that Coltrane and Hartman, in a way, had already played together previously. In the 1940s, they actually both backed Dizzy Gillespie at the same time. That's when they got to know each other, but the idea of them actually doing an album could have never been considered at the time because neither of them were really known other than they were in Dizzy Gillespie's band. While you do have these two icons, the reality is you can have the best musicians in history, but if it doesn't work well together, you're not gonna get amazing results. That's the amazing thing about this record. It is absolute musical perfection. The soul, the solos, the way that they trade with one another on the lyrical phrasings, it is absolutely amazing. Songs like Lush Life, which have been done so many times, My One and Only Love, so many times. This is where you find the definitive version of both of those songs. Both musicians are at the top of their game. It is as perfect for driving across the country as it is sitting around a fireplace on a cold winter night. It does not get any better than John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman together, and they did a really smart idea. They called the album John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman. Get it? So, I suggest right now, if you don't own it, pause the video right now. Right now. Go to Amazon. Go wherever it is you need to go. Get yourself a copy of this album. You can thank me in the comments because you're welcome. All right, so you guys have that album down. So now we're gonna go to the something new. And due to the current state of music, I think there's only one album that's appropriate. That's the new collaboration album between Jay-Z and Kanye West, Watch the Throne. I wanna say this and get it out of the way. I love Jay-Z. He's one of my all-time favorite MCs. If somehow you don't like Jay-Z, you need to readjust how you look at hip-hop music. He's absolutely phenomenal. It's impossible not to like him. Kanye West, I have no issues with whatsoever. Graduation, great record, love it. I love what Kanye does. If you're gonna be a music fan, a real music fan, you have to be able to put personalities to the side and judge them solely on their music. So forget everything else. You've got Jay-Z, you have Kanye West. How can you go wrong? Well, it's amazing because I will tell you this, after listening to the entire album, it was one of the most disappointing records I've experienced in a long time. I think one of the biggest problems actually comes on the production side of things, where the level of the actual music that they're rapping over is actually too loud. It's right at the same level as the vocals in most parts, and you can't hear the vocals well enough. This is an amateur mistake, and I cannot believe either of them would have let the record out with it sounding like that. That is a huge problem. The other big problem is this when it comes to the music. There's too much going on. I rarely say that because I like artists who put together layers upon layers. There's absolutely too much going on. They're trying too many different ideas at once, and it just turns into just this mess. That's what this album is. This album is a mess. I'll admit this, I don't know who Justin Vernon is, but I do know he completely ruins one song on this album. The song itself is so good, and then he comes in with this really weird bridge, chorus, oddball thing. It cuts the entire flow of the record down. It's horrible. I don't get it. You have Jay-Z, you have Kanye West, two really great rappers. Get out of the way. Stop putting in stupid little, I'm P. Diddy, so I'm gonna put in a yeah and an oh yeah and a you heard that over it. It's horrible. It ruins the songs. Let these two guys do what they do best. Stay behind the mixing board. There's a track on this album and it has Beyonce on it. I was so frustrated by this record because I've always liked what Beyonce has done in the hip-hop world in the past. She seems so forced. It seems so artificial, so engineered, so unnatural. This, for me, is a huge departure from everything both Jay-Z and Kanye have built their careers on, which is making it sound real natural, smooth flow, music that works well with the rhymes. This is nothing like that. There are too many people's hands on this. If you see the list of producers on this record, it goes on forever. It's like the album is having a giant personality crisis. There's another part of this album I just did not understand. Both the beginning and end of most of these songs have these massive, unendurable lead-ins and outros. You can do that at the beginning of the album, and if you got something creative to do, I suppose you could do it at the end, but having 30 seconds on a lead-in on every single track, it's pretentious, it's boring, and it makes you sit there like, wow, are they gonna rap or is this gonna be an instrumental? If you're the Beastie Boys, you can get away with that, and it's great because you can do a whole instrumental track, but when you're trying to push those two together, it just doesn't work. Some of the rhymes that Jay-Z and Kanye bring are some of their best. They're creative, some of them are funny. They check Michael Jackson in a very inadvertent way, which I give them a lot of credit for. That's a great verse. But overall, the verses are kind of like, eh. Now, maybe I don't get the point of this, and maybe I'm too old, and maybe it's because I'm just your average, extremely good-looking white guy, but I have an issue with the song Made in America. The chorus and the opening are filled with name checks of some of the most important and influential African Americans in history, and within 3 lines, as soon as Kanye starts rapping, he's using racial slurs. If you're going to make a commentary on racism, maybe you should leave those out. I know what you're saying to yourself. Well, the album is #1 all across the world. Yeah, it is. Just because something is #1 doesn't mean it's good. It means it's popular. So overall, like I've been saying, the record just doesn't seem to represent the personalities and talents of Jay-Z and Kanye West the way we've grown to know them over the last decade or more. This even goes so far as how they released it. Here's what they did if you didn't know. They took pre-sales through their own label, which is fine. Go ahead and do it. That's how business works. But after that, they only released it on iTunes, then only one version was in Best Buy, and they pretty much cut mom and pop record stores out of the picture. That to me is just wrong. I'm a fan of going to the local record store and getting the album I want. iTunes, whatever. iTunes is a beast you have to deal with, I understand, but at the same time, it makes no sense, unless it was a big pile of money, which neither of them need, why they would go ahead and cut out so many people for the sake of 1 or 2 businesses. It just doesn't sit well with me. There's one thing about this record that makes a lot of sense. It was supposed to originally be a 5-song EP. That makes sense because that's how many songs are worth hearing on this record. The single was one of them. There's a couple other really good songs, but if you get the 12-song version or even go ahead and get the deluxe edition, the deluxe edition is one of the biggest wastes of internet space you'll ever find. It's garbage. So in the end, you have 2 extremely talented guys who, for whatever reason, decided they were gonna collaborate, and it ends up one big mess. So for me, I have 2 categories of things. Buy it or borrow it. The final verdict on Jay-Z and Kanye West's Watch the Throne is an absolute borrow it. So those are the 2 albums for today. I hope you guys learned a lot. If you don't know them, check them out or don't. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. You can email me at thedailyguru@gmail.com. And of course, if you want to read my writing every single day where I write about the best songs ever written, check out my website at thedailyguru.net. We'll see you on Thursday.